Welcome, episode number 30, Metaverse Nomads podcast, where we talk about projects that are laying the foundation for the metaverse. And with me today are my co-hosts, and joining us is a very special guest. And for those of you who join us regularly, you know that we're not only big fans of Star Atlas, it's also the primary focus of our gaming guild, Rome. So therefore, Star Atlas needs no introduction, nor does the Star Atlas CEO and fearless leader, Michael Wagner. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You know, in the past, you've been incredibly generous with your time. In fact, a quick search of YouTube, anyone can find dozens and dozens of your past interviews. And since our audience already knows you really well, it makes it easy for us to skip right past what is Star Atlas and, you know, about your background and just jump right into some of the burning questions on our minds. But also, I wanted to kind of start at a very high level. But before I do that, how are you guys? You know, we've got Banjo here with us, and we've got Ray, and we've got Fancy. You guys doing good today?
Yep, I'm doing all right. It's a pleasure to have you here, Wagner. And thank you for all of you who are watching. We hope you enjoy.
Same here. Doing well. Wagner, glad to have you here. You know, one of my gripes on the town hall is talking about how much we love the team, but I think this is a safer environment to say how much we love the team. So really appreciate having you on today.
Thanks so much. Yeah, obviously we're very fond of the talent that we've been able to recruit over time. And I think, you know, just given the immense interest from not only the community, but talent pools all over the world in joining Star Atlas, where, you know, it's really going to enable us to deliver on this vision, this very ambitious vision that we've outlined. So great to be here with you guys. Rome, big supporter of yours as well. You guys have been around with us in Discord and participating in town halls and communicating with us now for quite a while. So thank you guys for all your support of Star Atlas as well.
You know, I think a good place to start is from a high level and just really talking about the metaverse and what were some of the inspirations for your vision for really wanting to bring Star Atlas to life. When you're talking to your friends and family, or just someone that isn't so tech savvy, how do you describe what the metaverse is and what you're building with Star Atlas?
Yeah, I mean, this question is one that's been coming up more and more, you know, because the metaverse itself, the concept, ideation of the metaverse is still in its formative stages. So there's, you know, I've said this in the past, but there's no real clear-cut definition of what the metaverse actually will represent going into the future. I like to present it as, you know, quite simply an alternative digital economy that is open for participation from anyone around the world. So that's kind of like, you know, thinking of the foundation of any society, the economy is a critical component and cornerstone of that. And so that's kind of what we're doing here at Star Atlas, is building a digital economy that's, you know, based initially on gameplay as the primary attraction and application that will bring people into our metaverse or our section of whatever the broader metaverse will become. And, you know, focusing in the future on the other aspects of metaverse development. So things like social interactions, education, workplace, commerce, shopping, you know, all of these various independent sectors of the global workforce today will be disrupted in some way and represented in the metaverse. That's my opinion. I also think of it largely as the next generation of the internet. So essentially everything that is possible on the internet today is going to be possible and executable inside the metaverse of the future, just in a more immersive digital environment.
A bit of an add-on question to that is, if you had the endless resources to build out the metaverse as you envision it, what does it look like, you know, 5, 10, 20 years out, if you were able to do it any way that you wanted it?
I don't want to sound arrogant in this response, but we've demonstrated enormous success over the past year. So that's not to say that we have endless resources today, but we actually have more resources than we're able to deploy presently. And, you know, so we're walking through the structure and strategy of how to maximize the utilization of our own treasury assets. But, you know, to be honest with you, I don't think we would change the roadmap or the vision in any capacity from what we've outlined currently. You know, we're developing out on as aggressive of a timeline as we possibly can right now. So maybe just to lay out that roadmap again a little bit, we are focused primarily on building out this AAA gaming experience first and foremost. Going back kind of to the previous question of, you know, what is the metaverse? I think of that as the platform. And then there are going to be a variety of applications. That could be work, that could be education, or in our case, our spearhead into this is a gaming application that's highly enjoyable, entertaining, engaging. It should be gameplay that people would want to participate in and engage in, with or without the financial incentive structure and mechanisms that we're building that are only possible through, things like NFTs and crypto native assets and the operation of the DAO. So in our roadmap and our vision, it's essentially spending the first years developing out that foundation and building those structures, but also focusing largely on gameplay. I think what is really critical about developing out a successful both economy and metaverse is the accrual or attraction of users, particularly in the short term. This is kind of a land grab, right? I mean, there's how many metaverse is now everywhere. You hear it everywhere. Major technology companies are looking to develop out their own ecosystems and their own environments. Look, the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. There's an underlying strategy there to move into digital environment development and metaverse. So without question, Facebook rebranding itself, its holding company, to Meta. I think that really demonstrates and solidifies in my mind the potential of this like future world that's being built right now. But as a component of the land grab is, what is the attraction? How do you get people into your world, into your universe as a starting point? And so we're doing that with gaming. The future though for Star Atlas is to focus on building out tool sets, so APIs and software development kits, SDKs, that are going to enable a future of entrepreneurs to create their own experiences, user-generated content that will live inside and around Star Atlas universe itself. Being able to enable and empower the world to create within your ecosystem is going to lead to exponential explosive growth and development, which is very synergistic with the existing users as well as new users. There's economic incentives in place to build in this world because the users are there. More users will join because now there's more experiences that other people externally are developing, and it eliminates the responsibility and the burden on us as a development studio to create everything, right? And we're essentially sharing in the economic upside, the distribution of value throughout this economy with everybody who's creating within it. And we're building the structures today that provide those incentive structures. Yeah, I mean, more to the point, I don't think we'd really change anything about our roadmap. We see gaming as being able to bring in the users. That's going to attract the builders because now they have an audience to sell their products to. And it continuously compounds going into the future. And it's so hard to say, what this timeline actually looks like. But I can tell you honestly, we're thinking on 20 to 50 year timelines, not 2 to 3 year timelines.
Is there a greater bottleneck with technology or with the deployment of manpower to actually roll out what your vision is?
Yeah, I mean, on the technology front, we're blazing trails here, right? Like we're working with alpha software, beta software in virtually every component of the application that we're developing. And even conceptually or philosophically, the idea of, say, the DAO, there's no clear framework or playbook to create a product around or to create a governance structure around. And in so many ways, the governance structures that exist societally today are the ones that we're trying to disrupt. We don't even want to model our own DAO off of, say, any sovereign state or country's government structure. We want to create a new, more inclusive system. That in and of itself is a massive undertaking, right? And will require a lot of feedback and communication with the community, with the public itself in developing this out. Now, we certainly have ideas of how we think the best initial implementation would look. And some of those are structured so that we can ensure that we maintain our, say, control over that structure in the immediate term so that we can continue to build out our vision. I talk about this a lot. We need to maintain control of the DAO for the first really 5 to 7 years. We want to bring this product to market. We want to lay the foundation. Now, that doesn't mean that the DAO itself won't have various proposals introduced that we abstain from that are still impactful to the community and impactful to the game. That's all going to be possible. But what we don't want is to relinquish control before we're able to build the foundation of something that we think can be revolutionary. So technology is tough. Solana has encountered its own challenges over the year. Those are challenges due to success, though. I mean, whenever somebody asks me, are you still bullish Solana? The network's gone down. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the network that's growing faster than any other. It's a victim of its own success in that when you have more people innovating and building applications and actually using the technology, sure, you're going to stress test it. I have absolute confidence that the team is going to resolve those issues, and we see how quickly patches come out to introduce those fixes. So, but Solana, using Serum's beta, we're even working in early access version of Unreal Engine 5. It's not even fully released yet, right? So there's a lot of things that are unknowns for us, a lot of unknown variables that we have to work through, and we're totally comfortable navigating that space. But it does mean that it takes a little more time, right? Because we're doing R&D, we're doing testing. Not everything works. We have to go back to the table, scrap something, and start over and rebuild. So that's part of the challenge. On the employment front, again, I think a very encouraging metric for us that I often share in the town halls is just how quickly we're attracting new talent. And the figure from the previous town hall was that we added 13 employees over 11 days, the first 11 days of February. We hire on average almost one person per day. I think it's very promising from our recruiting standpoint that we'll more than double the team over the course of this year. And in 2 years, I could see us being 1,200 to 1,500 people strong internally. And I'll just kind of close with, in terms of the previous question about unlimited resources. We are well capitalized. We've experienced a lot of sales, but what is important for the community to understand is that none of that's going in our pockets, and we don't intend to slow revenue, by the way, because we're competing with the likes of Microsoft, we're competing with the likes of Meta, who wants to spend $10 billion per year in building out their metaverse. Well,
right.
Yes, we've done phenomenal in our first year, but we know that the capital resources necessary to execute on this are substantial, considerably larger than what we have today. So we don't intend to slow down revenue, but every dollar is going right back into increasing the team size, motivating the team, providing a great internal incentive structure for that talent, so they can bring their innovative ideas to the table and provide them with an environment where they can feel free to operate and use their sophistication to bring innovative products and tooling to Star Atlas itself.
Well said.
Back before we as a gaming guild, Rome, before we were exposed to Star Atlas, we had already been a guild formed focusing on other games and other that are in development. And I remember one of the first interviews I saw with you, and the thing that drew me in, and I think probably the same for many of the rest of us here, is how open you were in communicating what you were doing and what you had planned. And you addressed some of the things that a lot of other companies were shying away from. We had lots of conflict in other communities simply for asking them what the utility of their NFTs were. So that was refreshing. And also the other thing that made sense to me is that you're approaching it from the background in education and finance. Mm-hmm. So when I look at some of the other projects out there, it seems that there's a heavy focus on the gameplay and a lot of the dreaming of what games can be without really establishing a foundation that can be long lasting economically. My question for you is, how much of your background in finance and your education, how much of that has influenced the way that you are looking to create this semi-virtual economy? And I'm calling it semi-virtual because there's aspects of it that make it a real economy.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's been incredibly beneficial, I would say, to the, things like token economic design and kind of internal economic design. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not an economist by trade, right? It is a traditional finance background. It's working in capital markets. It's understanding various financial instruments and how they work and how to create intrinsic value. That is quite literally what I would do every day when I was working in portfolio management, is look at a variety of financial models, and based on those models, create or determine the intrinsic value of an asset, the fair price of something. Right now, that is one of the most complicated things for humans to interpret, just to be perfectly honest. And this is in any category, right? It's one thing when we're like going to the store and shopping, but think about any form of negotiation that you encounter with another person. And this could even be deciding where to go to a restaurant. Right. That's some form of negotiation, right? Understanding and identifying what is a fair value for any form of exchange is incredibly complex internal computation that we all have to do, and it's very difficult. So bringing that into the way that we're structuring the economy is certainly helpful. With that said, though, I want to give a lot of credit to the co-founding team, because I'm extremely grateful that we've been able to bring this group of people together. And it was, call it serendipity or what have you, but, I've worked with Jacob and Danny now for going on 5 years, I want to say. They got involved with me when we were building Tokes, which was the crypto and cannabis platform, which, by the way, we are in the process of re-envisioning right now and bringing something to market on that I think the community at large is going to be pretty excited about. Just a little teaser, but having met them through that process and built and established one company within there, and figuring out that we work well together was great. Pablo is somebody that I met in 2018 as an indirect result of what we were doing at Tokes again, because he was also involved in the cannabis industry and maintaining that relationship over the years. But when you bring all four of us together, we have this extremely complementary skill set. You guys know quite well, Danny is the visionary behind the gaming product itself.
Yeah.
The entertainment value, the gameplay mechanics, the gameplay pillars, the thing that people really want to get engaged with. That's Danny's vision there, and he's bringing an amazingly beautiful product to market, right? And so I get to support him in realizing that vision, and likewise, Jacob on the technology side and managing this now I want to say 30 to 40 member engineering team that's focused on everything from web dev to infrastructure to blockchain development and game design and development as well. Like, that's complex. And Pablo, he's chief revenue officer. I mean, he's looking at all different types of strategic partnerships, business development, marketing, communications, press releases, managing all of these things that actually bring what we're building out to the community and out to the public. So the four of us combined, it's like Captain Planet. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm so grateful. Like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all four of us. We wouldn't be where we are today. And then, of course, on the back of that is all of the talent that we've recruited, really from the earliest days, that just these people treat their work as largely as if they were the entrepreneur themselves. They're bringing their own innovation and vision to the product, and we welcome that type of dialogue internally so that people don't feel concerned about expressing whether they have a concern or they think that they can contribute in some way through an idea. We cultivate and foster that. That's important to us, this idea of innovation internally. By no means do we feel like we've got the right answers for everything, because all of this is very experimental.
The inner workings and the culture of Star Atlas, it definitely shows in the Discord and in the community and from the mods. It tells a lot about a team. And then my other point that I wrote down here was that everyone gives advice on things they didn't do yet. So when it comes to the economics of games and the tokenomics, I'm just glad that your background in finances here shine through and influence a lot of what we read in these papers compared to, again, other projects. And there's a plethora of other projects. We're not just thinking of one whenever we say that, because there's a huge conversation around how projects are just being invested in to then sell and flip those assets. So the people who get these assets earlier on, then they leave, and it's a negative effect, net positive. It's not something that actually helps in the long term. Sound projects, great vision, but the economics of it all, if we're going to be living in the realm of NFT gaming, needs to be as sound as the gameplay, if it's fun.
Definitely agree with you. Yeah, and I appreciate those comments.
If I could tag on to that, well, first, I just want to say, considering your backgrounds, I'm sure your in-person ideation sessions are fantastic. But the question I have for you, and it's something that we've seen in another IP, is sometimes the visionary, the game creator, the person who has all the ideas, the fun gets in the way, right? Or I shouldn't say fun gets in the way, their vision gets in the way of fun. So how are you working internally to make sure that the game is not only matching the vision of what you want it to be, but it's going to be fun down the line?
There was a question early on about the kind of the genesis of the idea, and in so many ways we're building a Star Atlas as a passion project. You guys know about my background with the LAN parties and that group, the Lanarchists, right? Danny and Jacob, long time. We've been gamers, lifelong gamers, right? So we're building the product and the game that we actually want to play, and space exploration inspires the imagination. There's you guys know we've worked with Jason Silva. He was on some of the Rebirth posters, and he has this quote from I believe it's Marina Benjamin. It says, "When we dream of space, we dream of transcendence, and we dream of what we might become." And this idea of space exploration and just general exploration is so attractive to humanity. It's the reason why we've populated the globe, and all of us would love to be able to go navigate the stars, but physically we're not capable of doing so. Although now we have, many very successful technology entrepreneurs, billionaires that are launching their own spaceships now. And that's the next generation of humanity, is to actually go, populate the celestial bodies of the universe. But we get to bring that to the world in digital space today, and we don't have to wait, for the next 500 years for that to really be possible. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of gameplay, it's just a lot of discussion across our game design team and Danny's creative team, and we've gone through, even just since the start of the year, I think we communicated that over the first 3 weeks is really just exclusively planning and goal setting for the year. Last year, by the way, was, absolute whirlwind. We were nonstop going right into the end of the year, and I'm glad that we were able to get Score out. Score is not the most exciting gameplay. We fully appreciate that. But what we were able to accomplish was provide that true intrinsic utility for the ship NFTs that people have been purchasing. That was the most important thing. We want this exchange in value, right? So we're going to release iteratively. We want to give you some value. Now, that value might be more entertainment oriented going into the future and less about the financial incentives. We're not trying to build a DeFi platform here. That's not what it's all about. That's the enhancement. The gameplay is what we're focused on. So, but yeah, there's a lot of ideation and brainstorming sessions about what are the next mechanics that we want to introduce. And also, how does that impact, again, the economy, the foundation of really this environment that we're building? How does the release schedule impact the economy, impact the value to the users, lead to greater user retention and also user growth over time? I mean, there's so many variables that we're trying to manage. We don't have the luxury of just sitting back and trying to perfect everything before it comes out. Mm-hmm. We've got to keep moving and releasing because of the way that we came to the market. So it's a unique place to be in. There's a lot, it's kind of like operating on quicksand in many ways, but we have a lot of great minds that are also gamers that we know what we like to play. We know what we've had fun doing in the past, and we believe that we know what the community would want to engage in. So we try to bring that to market with the economy as the foundation in mind.
Just a couple more questions that are kind of outside of the Star Atlas ecosystem, kind of looking at the metaverse as a whole. And one of those is that you've mentioned Facebook, and we know that there's a lot of other big tech plays that are right now leveraging the buzzword of the metaverse. What do you think they're creating? What do you see being developed there? And how does that differ from what projects like Star Atlas are creating?
Yeah, there's, I would say, like 3 different kind of categories of platforms being developed. This is partially metaverse, but also partially gaming, and it's closed permission systems, which is the historical path for a game developer, right? Like, you don't actually own anything. You are agreeing to terms of service to be able to actively engage in whatever product it is that they brought, whether it's an MMO or a first-person shooter, or, say in the case of Meta, these are closed source systems that are permissioned in order to access. And then there's open permission systems, which is kind of the middle ground, where it's still based on centralized service provider, kind of your Web 2 legacy service provider, but there's greater accessibility to build on top of that. I would say Facebook or Meta is kind of in this realm of open permissioned because they are looking to also build tools that brings in creators, content creators and entrepreneurs. And then there's where we're at, which is open permissionless systems. I don't want to sound disingenuous with that because there is definitely a closed component of where we're at today with Star Atlas as we continue to build this idea out. The idea in the future is that everything is effectively decentralized, permissionless, and censorship resistant. So true to the ethos of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I don't necessarily want to compare us to Bitcoin, but it's analogous in the sense that once you're able to fully decentralize a network and have inclusive participation, it's effectively impossible to stop. The thing that government could impose on Bitcoin is to say it's illegal to trade. Now, that would be catastrophic to something like the price, right? So if you're a market speculator on Bitcoin, then the last thing you want to see are these restrictions at the government level on the trading of that digital asset. However, the technology is unstoppable, because the nodes operate all over the world, right? People get to participate in the actual infrastructure operation of that network. The ledger will continue to exist, and people will continue to trade Bitcoin for a variety of things, whether or not it ever were to become illegal. Just a quick kind of tangent here, or a caveat, is that Bitcoin, in my opinion, is definitely unstoppable at this point, simply because it has attracted far too much institutional interest. There's too many people with lobbying power out there that now hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and it's essentially too established into the mainstream that it would be globally catastrophic for governments to try to make Bitcoin illegal. So that's my personal opinion. Our idea, though, is to get Star Atlas to kind of the same level. So yeah, we're going to have back-end centralized servers that are operating game content initially. But think about the way that we're building logic today, even the way Score operates. When you're refueling a ship, by the way, that is an action that gets recorded on chain. Mm-hmm. I would also draw a differentiation here between this idea of blockchain gaming, because what we're getting is a lot of pseudo blockchain games. I'll also break this down into kind of three categories. You have traditional game developers building in either, say, Unity or Unreal Engine or some other game development engine. They're bringing all of those features just as they would as if it was a regular game, and then they're introducing, say, NFTs as an asset class within the game. That's kind of the easiest implementation. People are claiming that that is a blockchain game. In some capacities it is, but again, I think that's a little bit disingenuous. The next extension is to introduce, say, crypto native assets as a component, a central component to the underlying economy. That's another nice step forward, but not necessarily fully inclusive of being what we consider to be a blockchain game, which is actually building the logic to live on chain. So you have functionality that lives in the game engine, but you also have functionality that lives on chain. This is having that functionality live on chain means that it becomes open and accessible to third-party developers, right? We can't restrict access to that. If we have a mechanic that's operating on chain and somebody wants to build a tool externally to interact with that, I'll use the example of, say, the auto resupply tool that came out. I don't know if you guys saw this. It came to my attention. I didn't know about it until late last week or early this week, but somebody built a tool that will resupply their ships for them with the different resources. Okay. I mean, do we want to prohibit that type of innovation? Not necessarily. I don't see that as game breaking. We do want to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the game itself. But I actually think that's kind of cool that somebody undertook the effort to build a tool that interacts with our on-chain logic to refuel ships. That's great. That's kind of the most complicated, most complex way of developing out a blockchain game. But it also means that regardless of the environment that you interact with, whether it's a mobile application we release in the future, if it's in the web client through the mini game, or if it's an Unreal Engine, all of the actions or many of the actions of the players are going to be synchronized across those. Place a building in the web client and you'll see it pop up in Unreal Engine, because these are, again, functions of blockchain. And we're actually building out the SDK right now that is the crypto integration into Unreal Engine that doesn't exist. It's another tool that has to be created. It doesn't exist, right? We're building that.
So you mentioned centralization of some assets. How does that look in the future? How do you decentralize the stuff that you have to centralize now from a storage capacity, maybe an asset capacity? Can you share with us what your plans are?
Are you referring to asset creation, or maybe can you elaborate on the question?
Well, I'm assuming there's some level of backend that's being run on a centralized process, right? So, and if the goal is to decentralize all of that, do you see a node system for people who play the game? Do you have an idea of people just running nodes to help support the ecosystem?
It's a great question. And that is absolutely where we would envision it going. I mean, in some capacities, you can participate in Star Atlas decentralization by, say, being a node operator on Solana, right? If you're a validator on Solana, you're kind of supporting that network, which inherently supports our network. The bigger question outstanding in my mind is, would we ever reach a stage where we can actually have game servers that are fully decentralized through some network architecture? That's the Web3 that we all want to participate in. Decentralized storage, decentralized web, decentralized finance, all of these things are kind of the future of the internet. Now, again, what we have to be concerned about is the integrity of the game itself. Is somebody able to compromise or manipulate some element of gameplay if they're operating a node themselves, and say they're creating some competitive advantage, essentially cheating by operating that node? So this is all very future discovery related R&D, but that's the bigger vision, is like turning everything over, allowing everybody to participate in the architecture. And maybe you're not playing the game and earning from playing the game, but you're operating a node, and so you're actually earning off of the node. That's a fully inclusive economy. So that, yes, it's a great question. That is where we'd like to take it. Whether or not we're going to be able to achieve that in our lifetimes is something that's still an outstanding question for me.
So there's another question that I've had, and we're starting to see more and more of these companies pop up, companies that want to be the Steam of blockchain gaming. And you've kind of outlined some of the different facets of what people consider blockchain gaming. So if you think about a company that wants to do that, and we'll stay away from the names of who they are, what do you think those companies need to offer the developers to create a successful ecosystem?
I do think that the tooling is going to be important, but to be frank, I believe that we could reduce this down to, do they have the users presently? This is where, again, I think that Star Atlas is going to have a considerable advantage, because we're going to have the game that brings in the users that will be able to be exposed to new experiential opportunities that are created by third-party developers. If you're already flying around in Star Atlas, and then you look at, when you're loading up the game client, getting into Star Atlas, you see this list of games that have been created by external developers that are immediately accessible through kind of the Miniverse model. Well, we already have the traffic. If you have the traffic, you have the users, then you have the reason to encourage new developers to build on top of your platform. So yes, it's important to create tools like this Foundation SDK, which is what I was referring to when I said we're building the crypto integration into Unreal Engine. That's a like wallet management, inventory management, asset management support structure. Plus, I don't want to reveal too much on it right now, but this extensible tool set that we're using internally so that we can build this integration, but we turn that over, and now you're a traditional or legacy AAA studio that knows nothing about cryptocurrency. Well, you just take our plugin, right? You just take our plugin and you start building on it. And now you don't have to develop all of that. So that's one resource. But again, the users, if we already have 100 million or billion people in Star Atlas, more people are going to want to build with us and on our platform than with anyone else who's trying to bootstrap a Steam-like publishing client from the start.
You guys are putting a lot of time and money into the development of all this. You're running across the barriers, you're seeing the roadblocks, and you're creating solutions for them. Do you anticipate a day where the Star Atlas dev team licenses out their technology to other developers? Or is the idea to draw them all into using SDKs and APIs and stuff like that to draw them all into Star Atlas?
There's a possibility for licensing. You know, we're kind of still thinking through some of the commercial strategies on that. I feel really good about the revenue streams that we already have as a company. And so the cost benefit analysis that we'd be undertaking is, does it make more sense for us to create a cost barrier for a developer to create within Star Atlas, charging them for access to the tech that we've developed? Or do we benefit greater by simply providing that to anyone who wants to build on Star Atlas? And yes, we don't capture any immediate economic value, but what we do capture is the value of, you know, a larger GDP and user base across the entire universe of Star Atlas. More games, more activities, more experiences mean more users, which intrinsically increases GDP. And as you guys know, or I think you know, the way we structured the DAO itself is to capture a portion of the total GDP generated across the economy. That's how it's functioning today with Score, is all of the Atlas being spent to purchase resources is actually being channeled directly into the DAO. And at some point, the DAO has the ability to utilize those resources for various, you know, pretty pivotal decision making, which is not necessarily just passing those resources back out to the holders, the governors of the DAO, but actually utilizing them, maybe to run a community growth campaign, maybe to fund an external developer, maybe to, you know, maybe to pay Star Atlas, maybe to pay us or a subsidiary team of ours to build a specific feature that the community wants to see. We already have the structure wherein there's financial resources in a treasury to make impactful decisions across the ecosystem, and that's what the DAO is. That's how it operates, right? So the whole point, though, is to continuously build transaction volume, to build GDP, and it's why I often refer to what we're building as kind of nation state-like, sovereign state. We effectively operate as this independent country without borders that anybody can participate in, and the way that countries manage their success across their economy is purely through GDP. How much economic value is exchanged across the entire country. And so we're thinking in same terms.
So we're going to narrow down back into the NFT gaming space for a second. What are your thoughts on the overall NFT gaming space? And are there any concerns that you see in the space at the moment, or when you first got involved heavily? And then is there any innovations on the radar that stand out, whether you noticed them or were brought to you by a team? Is there anyone on the team that are scouting out for any other innovations in the space that Star Atlas could possibly benefit from?
It's a great question. I kind of have to defer it for now, to be honest with you, only because I've been so immersed in Star Atlas now for so long that I'm not really able to keep pace of what's going on. There is so much innovation taking place across the entire crypto ecosystem. It's hard for me to stay up to date. But I will say we did just bring on a GameFi analyst, and we are looking at increasing the analyst positions throughout the company so we can monitor things like innovation across DeFi and blockchain gaming and look for those best opportunities that we can integrate or introduce into Star Atlas. We get contacted daily from people that are looking for some form of strategic partnership, integration, announcement, collaboration, etc. Once going back to my earlier point about, determining the value of, say, a relationship, that is a very complicated equation. And in many cases, we understand that right now, because of the, call it success, kind of, I almost hate to say enormity of Star Atlas, but how quickly we've exploded into the scene, we understand that we bring a lot of value to anyone that we partner with. But at the same time, we want to ensure that there's a true long-term sustainable relationship with anyone that we engage with, because it dilutes us every time we say we're partnering with someone else if it's not genuine. So part of the new team that we're building out on the growth side within Pablo's department of revenue ops is looking at all of these strategic partnerships, but also the innovation that's taking place, analyzing those as opportunities, and then looking for ways that we can build upon Star Atlas with that information. And so I'm looking forward to the day where I can get let's call it the weekly debrief of, hey, these are the 5 hottest projects. This is what they're doing. This is what they're doing different from us. And this is how we believe we can improve what we're doing at Star Atlas. So that's all coming. That'll happen this year, but it's a new department that we're currently recruiting for.
Beautiful.
That's a great lead into the next question here. And that is, now with the team growing at such a fast pace, how involved are you in the actual design of the game at this point? Or are you having to kind of move out into tasks specific to being the CEO?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's, I think, one of those transitions that successful companies and CEOs have to experience at some point. Yes, I've launched companies in the past. Nothing's ever reached the level of success that we have at Star Atlas. And so my day-to-day is certainly changing quite a bit. It's somewhat disheartening because I love being really deeply involved and also understanding the nuance of every conversation. But just given the scale of the company at this stage, I can't be as involved and as intimate as I was previously. So what I'm still trying to navigate personally is how do I capture the most important pieces of information so that I can communicate effectively with the community, with people like you, right, on phone calls like this. If you're going to ask specific questions, I need to make sure I can at least hit the highlights of what it is that we're doing. So I am involved on a lot of those calls internally, not so much with the actual structuring, but more of a presentation of what was decided. And then if there's any necessity to alter anything, then, then I contribute my thoughts there. Where I'm still more involved, but will likely over the course of this year be less engaged, is on the economic design. Still looking at building out our team on that side. And it has proven challenging to identify specific people that fit the mold. What I'll put out here is that we structure the economic department as really a chief economist, which is different from traditional studios that would hire a chief game economist, because they're thinking more in terms of those closed permissioned economies. We're thinking again in terms of nation state like operations. So we're still looking to hire that chief economist role. But then there's the head of game economy, the head of token economy, which is like open Web3 type integrations and better understanding of what's going on in the crypto ecosystem. And then a head of monetization, which just looks at ways, again, that we can commercialize the product, but also thinking in terms of value exchange with all of the users. And then analysts and data scientists all beneath those.
It's a lot. I mean, do you guys feel like you guys are doing all of the pioneering, or do you feel like there's even any projects, anything out there that you can lean on and look to and say, okay, there's a model? Or is this pretty much from the ground up, you guys, we got to build it?
I might not be speaking for the entire team. Again, with all of the communication that's going on, people are posting examples of things like governance frameworks, DAO frameworks that other people are introducing. One of those frameworks that we're exploring right now is Tribeca, which is deployed by Saber on Solana. So, certainly we're not creating all of the innovation throughout the space. We need to rely on the minds of the global population in building out what we're building. And again, to me, it's one of the greatest advantages of building in this open Web3 world is we get to pull from all of the creativity that exists out there. All of the DeFi protocols that are being focused on centered on within Solana right now, at some point will be integrated in some way into Star Atlas, whether it's just as a third-party service that people can locate themselves and go, deploy the resources, like Tulip Garden, for example, being able to lend out your Atlas and Polis. Awesome, right? We don't have that directly integrated into our front end, but people know it exists, and that's an advantage to our users. That's a benefit to our users. So all of these things we get to pull from. So with that said, we see ourselves as kind of a North Star in the space, and we also take a lot of responsibility, we believe, in stewarding this appropriately going into the future, because we are probably a beacon for many other teams that are looking to build.
When it comes to gameplay itself, we see around the industry, we see a lot of different approaches, but most of them seem to have some really large assets that they will use in sale of the game. Now, the assumption is, from the outside looking in, is that is one of the models used to raise capital to be able to do the things that as a game developer you need to do. Is there something underlying that leans towards creating a level playing field for anyone to have the hero's journey in a game? Or is it designed from the very start to be a kingmaker, meaning like, here's a big asset, and from immediately day one, this group or this individual is going to be a really big influencer within the game? Is there any thought or leaning to one way or the other, or are both of these things considered?
Yeah, I would liken kingmaking to kind of pay to win, which is certainly what we want to avoid. I mean, definitely our objective here is to create balance throughout the game, such that people are able to pool resources competitively to be able to participate in all endgame activities. Obviously, you guys have a great guild. You have many members. It's one of the areas that we think is going to create a lot of value for the individual player, is participating collectively with other individuals in the execution across the game. There's so many deep layers of complexity in the way that we structure like career paths and progression, that we believe that there will be opportunity for everybody. Certainly somebody who has a Titan or commandership is going to be able to defeat somebody who has a small or extra small ship. But if you're able to combine resources, then a Titan should not be invincible. I guess, let me just put it that way, right? And also we want to encourage this community group participation across even things like factions. So sure, you have your DAC, and you guys have your own internal strategy of how to operate, maybe maximize resources and efficiency of productivity yourselves. But that doesn't mean that you guys are going to even be able to complete everything yourselves. You and your faction will need to combine resources on some mega structures, and maybe the only way another Titan is created is through a faction level group participatory vote through that internal DAO infrastructure, right? So the faction DAO can determine if and when another Titan class ship gets introduced. So what we do want to create is a system wherein people are able to continuously grow, both financially and progressively in leveling of their character, strength of their character and attributes. But what I believe is that we can create this system wherein you're, through the in-game earnings, you're kind of reinvesting that back into yourself and continuously improving upon the ship class and character class and land class that you're operating. So you can grow, right? We don't want to restrict anybody to a particular style of operations. We want you to be able to grow and progress personally through the game. And we think that doing so with guild members will make you more effective at that, but it doesn't mean that that's a requirement.
Makes sense. With the Titan ships themselves, one of the things that's come up on our show a lot that we've had questions about is why so early in gameplay? It almost feels like either this end game thing that you should be aiming for, or perhaps something that you build up to as a faction rather than just right out the gate. Here's God mode. That's kind of, it kind of seems that way. So I'm just curious what the thoughts were behind it. And I'll add to this. One of the suggestions that someone came up with on the show is that why wouldn't the auction be for perhaps blueprints to be able to build your Titan? That way there was still some runway before all of a sudden you had this dominant player, this dominant force in the game.
I don't think we're necessarily fully decided on path of execution for the Titans. We've outlined what a release schedule would look like this year, which is inclusive of all of our ships, by the way, not just of the Titans. I guess what I want to clarify is it's not necessarily about revenue for us. We do see these as being very high dollar value items. We think they'll sell for a lot in auction. And there is a publicity component there that's incredibly beneficial to the entire ecosystem. When you see, Forbes picking up or Bloomberg picking up articles or drafting articles about, sales greater than 1 million or 500,000 or, whatever the case may be, this is a lot of exposure for us as an entity. And so we see considerable earned media value in being able to do that. That earned media being something we didn't have to pay for or necessarily contribute to. It's the media picking us up because what we're doing is impresses them in some capacity. And so that's not exclusively beneficial to us as a team, by the way. Again, we think about the growth of the ecosystem, the growth of the economy being denominated in growth in the user base. The more users, the more value exchanged. That benefits the DAO. It means more people are interested in assets. So it's kind of a marketing strategy in many ways. Just to be frank, it's a way for us to, we believe, get great exposure to the global population through a successful auction process. Those assets are, again, though, not intended to be God mode by any means. They can be destroyed. They will be destroyed. And a ship like a Titan being destroyed is also probably going to make headlines somewhere.
That'll make news.
Same in Eve, right? When like millions of dollars of Eve assets are destroyed. Well, now there's real financial consequences, though, because we're doing this on chain. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And you had mentioned community-based, development towards different structures. And I think we've heard in the past Dyson Sphere, we've heard, Titans. Is there any other large community projects that you anticipate coming into the game?
I can't speak to anything else right now, to be honest with you. But again, these would be collectively managed and collective resource requirements to be able to develop out these mega projects. But largely it's going to be based on things like, do you have a construction facility capable of building out ships on the scale of Titans, right? Like a shipyard module that can actually develop a Titan before a faction can, even if they have the blueprint, before they can even develop out a Titan or build one, they're going to need the shipyard facility that's capable of constructing it. And so something like that might be a faction-wide activity or project.
Good to hear.
Speaking of newsworthy events, potentially another newsworthy event for Star Atlas this year could be land sales, if that actually takes place. This is an article that was talking about how last year, which I think these numbers actually look a little light, we're about a half a billion in metaverse real estate. The expectation of $1 billion this year. Well, with having Star Atlas having recently done over 200 million in chip sales, if there was even something similar to that in land sales, that would be nearly a quarter of that projection for all metaverse real estate. Do you anticipate large numbers similar to ship sales, and will we even know anytime soon, like how many land plots there will actually be available for land? For example, with the existing base of users now, if every single person wanted to get a piece of land, will there be enough land for that to happen? Or is there going to be scarcity of land and it's going to be, not necessarily a free for all, but what can you tell us about land?
Just on the question of quantity of users, we have something like 91,000 fleets actively enlisted in Score right now. That's not necessarily indicative of daily active users, by the way, because it's quite possible for one person to be enlisted through multiple wallets, or it's possible for multiple wallets to be essentially aggregated, or multiple users to be aggregated into a single wallet and pooled today, just for simplicity of management. But
so when you say fleets, like for example, when I launch ships. Now, would my wallet be considered a fleet, or all of the different ships that I launch are those individual fleets?
Your wallet in aggregate. So even though you're enlisting individual ship types, it's all aggregated into a single fleet, which is recognized based on your wallet being registered to a particular faction. So about 91,000 wallets have selected factions to date, which we think is pretty impressive, just considering we've got fairly limited gameplay functionality right now. In terms of land, we've talked a little bit about some of the restructuring of the roadmap that we've undertaken. I think on the last couple of town halls, we talked about that. We did anticipate having land development and production being the next major feature release this year, but we've actually since reprioritized an enhanced version of ship missions or ship exploration, focusing more on ship assets again, especially given, that's the primary NFT asset that's available on the market to date. We have more ships coming online, as you all know, throughout the course of this year. So land was deprioritized. Little alpha for everyone out there is that the new ship mission module is going to lead to some land-based resources that will be able to be utilized. What we aren't going to be doing for land sales is pre-selling prior to ability to utilize that asset. So whereas with ships, ships were being sold in the Galactic Asset offering before we had any gameplay functionality. We actually thought gameplay would come a little bit sooner than it did. It just took us a bit longer to get that feature out. We are going to strategically withhold land until we know that we have the actual functionality in a gameplay loop that would be near immediately released after the release of land. So can't give you any additional information on quantity of parcels or pricing of parcels. We do have some rough figures for that, but by the time we get there, all of that's likely to change. I would say, at least with the smallest land parcels, though, very similar to extra small ships, is we want those to be in ample supply so that everybody can at least get access to that gameplay loop should they want to.
With regards to land, the way that we've theory crafted about it in the past is we know we've got the 3 factions, and those factions will each have regions, and the regions will potentially have planetary systems and then planets and then land plots. Is there any forecasting of how many regions for regional DAOs there will actually be per faction? Is that something that's been finalized yet, or even anywhere close?
Yeah, not finalized, but I got an engineering update every 3 weeks. We do three-week sprints for internal planning and then execution. And so every 3 weeks we have a demo day, internal demo day. And I saw some really cool procedurally generated planets, 3-dimensional planets, and a plotting system for those planets as a result of that new system that's being developed that also, randomizes things like size of parcels of land, as well as the various resources that are going to be available on each one of those individual parcels. So in terms of quantity, though, again, what we want to closely model is the number of users and accessibility to land against total supply. So we do fully anticipate that land expands over time. Productive land is not necessarily a finite resource. It's a carefully balanced resource. In contrast, though, we do have 2 different versions of land, and that's, there's cosmetic land and then there's productive land. So productive land is extracting resources, and that could either be minerals that go into NFT crafting, or it could be farming resources, which goes naturally into the food supply. Cosmetic land, it refers to, player habitats or commercial structures on central space stations. Those will be probably more rare than the productive land. Productive land is a necessity for the economy to fully function, right? Because it allows players to create assets that then, these player created assets then go into satisfying demand from new users that enter into the economy. Essentially, we kind of pull Star Atlas from the standpoint of selling assets. We slowly reduce the amount of assets that we sell, and at the same time increase the player's ability to create these assets, fulfilling that, again, supply and demand across the economy itself. Cosmetic, though, this is, it could be your guild hall, it could be a resting place, you could put your NFT art up in there. These could be art galleries or museums that are created by players. They could be commercial outlets like apparel stores, right? Whether you're selling digital NFT apparel, cosmetics, or if you're Nike and you hop into Star Atlas and you're actually selling shoes, which we see as a major opportunity going into the future, and displacer of things like Amazon. That's kind of big picture.
I want to jump in and say Nike is used as the main example. Is there some behind the deals announcement that's going to come in the future of a Star Atlas Nike something? Because I always hear a Nike example being used. So I don't know. Is this something to look forward to?
No, not yet. Not yet. I mean, I fully anticipate that they'll be interested in us when the time's right. Again, this kind of goes into the comment I made about our growth team and our strategic partnership and integration team. We want to be very careful and restrictive in the types of brands that we introduce into Star Atlas, especially in the formative stage. What we don't want is internet of the 90s where it was like pop-ups everywhere and advertising everywhere. We don't want to create that experience, right? We think it pulls people out of the immersion that we're creating here. So
Sure.
we're going to be pretty particular about who we enable to come in and when.
What movie was that? It was a Judge Dredd or one of the other ones. Like every restaurant is Taco Bell.
It was Demolition Man.
That's right.
Yeah, love that movie.
On the topic of assets and land and things like that, any thoughts about the current distribution of things like tier 5 land claims, or even the balancing when you look across the three factions? Like when you created the concept, there was really no way to know who would lean in what direction. But are there levers that can be pulled? And like, what are the thoughts and considerations that go into balancing when we see numbers like this?
I would just suggest that these numbers have zero significance in the long term. Those are based off of rebirth rewards, right? So we ran the rebirth campaign, the digital art multimedia meta poster campaign from April to July of 2021. And those were accompanied by various game asset rewards based on collecting posters up to through a tier system. So they were strictly benefits for those people that were purchasing posters, and again, are not indicative of the quantity of supply that will be available or distribution of supply when we actually fully release land assets. I'll just take this as an opportunity because I do communicate this as often as possible, but the recommendation is not to speculate on purchasing any of those assets on the secondary market at this stage, because you have no knowledge, awareness whatsoever of what our pricing or availability is going to look like. So I would just wait until we actually reveal numbers about land itself before making any purchases, especially on the secondary.
With the different tiers, will you be able to upgrade a tier 1 all the way through a tier 5? And at the time of sale of these assets, once Star Atlas does make them available, will all of the different tiers be made available, or will you be starting at tier 1 regardless at the time of when you make it available?
There's still some internal discussion surrounding the full availability of various tier claims. To your first question, yes, you will be able to progress from a 1 to a 5, most likely. Subject to change, let me put that asterisk there, always subject to change. But yes, the idea is with virtually every asset in the game is that you can progress and improve over time through some reinvestment of resources back into that asset. There's a chance that we do not directly sell, say, tier 4, tier 5 land claims, yet to be determined on that.
What is the distinction, the difference between a freighter and a transport?
That's a great question for Danny. To be honest with you, I probably do not have the full distinction for you. I would be speculating in my response, to be honest.
Good old theorycraft.
We do have a transport that's specific to people, human transportation, but I'm not actually confident that that's what's being defined there.
One of the ships already looks like a luxury cruise liner.
That
maybe host parties.
That actually is a concept. So
yeah, DJ events, I can see that happen. Speaking of ships like that, do you have a personal favorite of the ships that have already been released?
There's too many good ones, guys. I can't possibly pick a favorite out of everything that's coming out. Plus, seeing some of the new ships that have not yet been revealed, I just want to give it up to our creative team. I mean, all of this concept art is absolutely gorgeous. So no, I'm not going to pick any favorites. I like too many different ships, and I do have my own fleet that I've been building up over time as well, and I'm participating in score, and I've got a nice little variety. But
same question for one of the races.
Whether or not I'm also not revealing which faction I'm in. Again, but trying to maintain objectivity here, right? We don't want to influence anybody to participate in any faction. Right. No faction has a native competitive advantage. As you know, it's all that Rochambeau kind of rock, paper, scissors, a triangular approach of there's an advantage and disadvantage to every one of the factions, or call it a competitive advantage and disadvantage relative to the other factions.
Awesome. Fancy Hat, Ray, No Banjos had to part ways here. Yep. Any final questions you guys have for Michael?
I do have one that I've been thinking about for a while. What is Star Atlas's stance on ships that have more or less power than the current size model? So, for example, an extra small that has more guns than it rightfully should have, or a really large ship that doesn't have any protection and being like valued perhaps below what current ship sizes are? The reason I'm asking mainly is because I remember the X4 can fit inside the Calico Hero, so I'm hoping I can get like a really powerful one that fits inside there as well.
Again, there should be balance, right? So if we identify that there's a particular ship class that is out of balance based on defenses, weaponry, speed, size, then it's likely to see those get updated over time. You know, this is kind of the age-old rebalancing of character classes getting nerfed or buffed.
Yep.
It's going to happen. It should be expected. Of course, that is going to impact the value, the perceived value of any one of these assets, but it should be expected that that's going to take place over time.
I do have a question, different topic. During the town halls, which are great, by the way, that the team hosts for the community, the topic of education and safety come up a lot. So I just wanted to pick your brain and see if there was any updates for the onboarding and education side of Star Atlas and what that might look like. It would be neat if there's a course that you have to complete outside of anything showroom or Star Atlas specific, and then it leads them into having to enter the showroom, which then the education continues on lore or different ships. And so it's an easy bridge right over, and it's not like you learned it, you completed it. The education outside of wallet creation and then transferring money, and then what would need to take place after they set all that up is get into the showroom to maybe look at ships that they might want to buy, because that's the whole point of them doing that first educational walkthrough in the first place. So where is the team? Are there specific employees, or is there a department just for that? And has there been any updates on how soon we'll see something like that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Again, we do see ourselves as having an enormous responsibility to help protect people. It's not possible for us to protect everyone, right? And you guys know how many scams are out there. People with malicious intent are out there. It's impossible to protect everyone, but we do take it upon ourselves to provide information, education to this crypto onboarding and to simplify that process. You know, one of the things we just released was kind of like how to get into Star Atlas. The trade-off for us is what friction do we introduce to new users versus how much protection do we provide for them? You know, so I love your idea of having this course. I would say the course should probably be optional in order to access various components of the platform, but you know, at least it's available. We're still in formative stages of educational content, but it is something that is top of mind for us. And in the meantime, what we're trying to do is just effectively communicate to people, especially the newer users who haven't heard it repetitively, just how important it is to protect your assets, not trust all of these sites, you know, confirm what application it is that you're interacting with. So right now it's mostly just a communication strategy, but that is going to evolve into an educational platform. I guess I'll just close with, I've had multiple conversations now with educational platforms, not necessarily for crypto, but actually for people that are focused on things like STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This entity in particular focuses on minorities and female entrepreneurs that are looking to build companies in that space, in those fields. And they would like to use Star Atlas as a platform for doing that. I mentioned education as one of the core areas that we believe the metaverse will be useful for going into the future. So there's a couple of components there. One is, you know, education to be able to use our platform from the user or gamer standpoint. There's education for the builders of the future. And then there's just broad education that people can access and use as a way to get informed and maybe better themselves, empower themselves going into the future. So nothing major yet. It is one of those things that we want to allocate some resources to, but hasn't been the immediate priority.
Fabricant we know of as a major player in the fashion side of what's going to be taking place in the metaverse, Star Atlas specific, or the dealings between Star Atlas and Fabricant. But I speak for all guilds, I think, when I ask this question. How early, if not right out the gate, are we going to be able to soup up our own citizens of Rome with any type of ware that we create? And what does that look like, whether it's sooner or later?
Well, I mean, certain things will come relatively soon with the launch of the DAC platform, which is where you'll be able to officially register your guild with Star Atlas. You know, we are looking at a variety of toolings that we can provide that would enable you to do things like issue your own tokens or issue your own NFTs. Some of this is, let me caveat and say, we are undertaking legal review right now on what functionality we can actually provide. We want to ensure that we don't violate any of the regulations or laws that exist out there. But, we are looking at providing tooling. A part of that would be, some customization of a guild banner, a guild flag, a guild logo, right? To the extent that we can provide it and you can identify yourself on your equipment with that, we certainly want to provide that as functionality. If you're thinking about the ability to, say, create your own apparel that you sell, that's probably longer in the timeline. But to put on a piece of clothing that represents which guild you're in, that is the functionality we do want to provide.
Ship skin, ship decal, that'd be pretty cool.
Right.
There's actually there is a ship skin, a skinning product like tool set that's being developed internally. I don't actually have the latest update on it, to be honest with you, but in Danny's department, and it's one so we can create ship skins and other skins very seamlessly and rapidly. But I would see that as the tooling that we also provide, where you can customize that and put your own logos again, iconery into the design so that you can offer that to your guildmates. I think that's a cool thing, and in no way detracts from the economy. It just allows you to identify and with one another and form that tribalism that's kind of fun in games.
Right. Awesome. Glad to hear it. And the follow-up question to that was, if we or any guild creates a Colosseum, for example, would it be possible to have it look Rome-esque, like a faux Rome type of theme? What is the building going to look like? What does that include on the ends of like building out something that you would want to see as the theme of your guild, if there was one?
Very hard for me to say right now.
Okay.
I mean, the idea would be, again, to provide tooling for crafters. Now, to what extent are we able to provide optionality? I don't know, because it's very likely that we're going to provide some template system that you can use initially, right? Here's 10 different buildings that you can select, and you can construct those, and these are the resources necessary to do that. To come in and do full customization of an area of space is that's a little difficult, but it's also possible that, depending on where we're at with our own internal DAC relations, that we're able to provide some of these or fulfill some of these requests with our own development resources. So, you're a considerable guild, you hold a certain amount of polis in the DAO, you hold a certain amount of assets in game, you own land in this area of space, and you're looking for something customized, then maybe we can provide that. Again, wanting to ensure that we're fairly distributing resources to anybody, but I could see us establishing a program wherein, if you demonstrate to us kind of your economic commitment to the metaverse and to the economy, then we're able to provide some development resources to you as well, or open the doors for you to build your own resources, and assuming that they conform with standards that we've outlined, that we can actually implement or import those assets and let you use them. So these are all options.
Great, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and I'll take a moment maybe just to describe a little bit about what we see as the future growth and enablement of user-generated content, UGC, and that extends not only to like in-game assets, but also external world experiences. That at some point, we do anticipate that the universe of Star Atlas starts to absorb these microverses or mini-verses that will live initially through the game client, but external to the universe itself. We want to establish a standards for graphical fidelity, standards for economic design, and then, assuming that people can conform to these standards, and it is developed in a way that has relative uniformity with what we're building at Star Atlas, then we essentially allow that world to live inside the universe that is Star Atlas. And so it's something, there are geographic coordinates that people can actually travel to with their spaceships, right? But upon entering that world, that planet, call it, it could be a completely unique experience. And this is where it gets kind of interesting with the idea of a Steam-like publishing client, is that all of those worlds could actually be miniature versions of games. Now, that's not to say that you would seamlessly travel through their atmosphere with your ship, but that's essentially your entry point into that video game. And you might take your Star Atlas NFTs and then start playing some zombie hunter game or, survival game, and earn experience for your avatars and your crew members that carries through back into Star Atlas. So
I could follow up again and, and ask, would there be any Star Atlas grant programs to help foster these types of projects that people might have, to like bootstrap it and then have it, for those that are hyper interested in seeing like a Colosseum look Roman and built and actually placed on land they might own as a guild?
I could certainly see some type of program being established for, like a grant program being established, certainly.
My final question to you before we let you go here is, are you feeling good about the current roadmap and the timeline for the things that are going to soon be released this year? Are you feeling pretty good about that?
I'm feeling really good about it. Yeah, we just last week we did go through a pretty big overhaul of what the roadmap looked like. Again, trying to assess timelines to delivery, enjoyability, and economy. So some of the stuff that we wanted to accomplish with land production, as happens in the ideation phase, gets bloated extremely quickly. So, once we get to the point where we're like, this is what we'd like to deliver, but we know that it's going to take us a year and a half if we actually build it out that way. We had to reassess and reduce down. And then it's a question of, well, how much do we get to utilize going forward? Score is a feature, for example, that is likely to be fully deprecated. Now, some of that functionality might be repurposed, but what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we're continuously introducing features that have no continuity behind them, right? So it's something that we want to be able to build upon. And that's what we're focused on this year, and where we've gone through and restructured the roadmap to focus again more on ship assets and these ship missions, which will directly lead into broader space exploration based on geographic coordinates, and that's where the land will ultimately live. So I feel really good about our roadmap this year. Not only do we have a major feature release coming for the mini game, possibly two would be aggressive in full transparency, but at least one major feature release in around mid-year, and then we also have a major feature release with the showroom coming out also around mid-year. So a major UE production output and a major minigame production output. I think that in and of itself would be quite a successful year, but there's we don't pump the brakes. Once we get those out, it's just right on to the next thing. So feeling really good.
Well, Michael, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We appreciate having you on. For those watching, we mentioned quite a few things. As you can see there, that's his Twitter handle. And of course, you're going to see the link for the Discord and for the website. And for anything that we've talked about, you'll find some links and ways to navigate through that in the description of the video. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We appreciate having you. And look forward to having you on sometime again in the future. We appreciate being part of the community as a whole, and just love the way that you guys are responsive. You hire from within the community, and yeah, things are looking good for the future of Star Atlas. Thanks for being on, Michael.
Absolutely. My pleasure, guys. Really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to doing this again in the future.
Are you ready for the next evolution in gaming? Blockchain games are here. Why just play when you can play to earn? Enter the Star Atlas Metaverse with Rome. Star Atlas is a grand strategy game of space exploration, territorial conquest, political domination, and so much more. Rome is a premier guild of the ONI Faction within Star Atlas. Rome is here to play and to earn. Want to take part in the action? Rome is accepting new citizens. Join the Rome Guild on Discord to learn more at gorome.io.